Tô a fim de ver esse vídeo, pera aí, galera. Aí depois a gente volta pro bagulho, né? Talvez eu possa voltar a gritar, não sei.
Taking over the world, gaining more than triple Reddit's monthly user base and generating over $1.5 billion a year, with Twitch making the world ever more like the Truman Show, where we watch, comment and become attached to the lives of strangers around the world, spawning a whole new era of parasocial relationships, simping, swatting and loneliness, with all of this being for the profit of Mr. Bezos. But Twitch isn't like other social media sites, because unlike other big tech startups, Twitch wasn't created by some yuppie entrepreneurs or corporate enterprise. Instead, Twitch started as an artistic experiment by a 23-year-old called Justin Can, who is considered...
Caralho, esse cara tinha 23 anos quando, velho? 80 anos atrás? What the fuck?
To be an artist following in the footsteps of Andy Warhol. Quite a contrast to the corporate Twitch we see today. So then how did Twitch go from a 23-year-old's artistic experiment to becoming one of the world's biggest websites, making billions in revenue, creating global news events, simping and shaping our entire society and culture in just the span of a few years?
What the fuck? Ele tá exagerando já um pouco no começo já. Mas beleza. Twitch não é tão grande assim ainda. Pode tá crescendo e talvez mostre aí nesse vídeo, né? Mas o Twitch não é tão grande assim, what the hell?
It all began in 2007 when Justin Can would release his Justin TV project. Justin TV was an experimental live streaming project, broadcasted on the newly founded website of the same name, where Justin would stream his daily life and all the things he did, pioneering a completely new mode of entertainment, where Justin would attach a camera to his hat and broadcast live 24/7. This literally included sleeping, shopping, all the mundanities of life, although bathroom breaks were omitted. You see, Justin even publicized his phone number with viewers calling into the show. However, of course, by doing this, Justin would become one of the first victims of swatting, a practice where people call in phony tips to the police, which results in a streamer getting raided. But for Justin, this didn't matter, because Justin TV was becoming a viral hit. People loved how raw and human the experience was. The live, unedited, almost amateur nature of the show never failed to entertain.
Mano, esse cara existe ainda, mano? Eu nunca ouvi falar desse cara, mano. Como assim, velho? Qual é o nome dele? Justin o quê? Justin... Parecendo Bieber... Twitch, vou colocar assim, ó. Justin, co-founder da Twitch. O canal dele existe ainda. Mas... eu nunca mais fiz stream. O último stream dele fez há 14 anos atrás. Justin Can? É sério isso? Não é sério, né? É sério mesmo. Nunca soube. Você sabendo desse cara? Robot the top again. Confounder Twitch, not working, making video. Caralho, o que aconteceu, será? Tá continuando.
It gave a true window into the life of one man, an experience truly lacking in the world of polished and glossy reality TV shows. And so this innovative website quickly gained huge amounts of publicity, attracting attention from the internet and mainstream media alike. But praise also came from very unlikely places. Justin TV was actually hailed as following on from Andy Warhol's numerous projects depicting the mundane. People saw Justin TV as a work of art, where viewers could find a certain beauty and engagement in the everyday life of Justin. And it was this explosion in popularity that enabled Justin and his friends to expand the website. This meant the site can include lots of different channels and categories covering a wide variety of content, although gaming content was quickly proven as the popular cornerstone of the site. This new site was basically the beta version of Twitch. Although having said this, it's very unlikely anyone watching at the time, or even Justin and the founders, had any idea of the potential of Justin TV. Now in 2007, Justin TV was remarkable for lots of reasons, because unlike many of its other internet competitors, Justin TV seemed to be undamaged by the 2008 financial crash. It also had insane growth numbers, because just after 3 years of being on the internet, Justin TV had become the 250th most visited site globally. But perhaps the greatest part of Justin TV was its core grassroots creative origin. This open-minded artistic philosophy enabled a renaissance in live content, with streamers and viewers alike flooding into the platform. With a made-for-artist by artist paradigm, the site was perfectly poised to become the juggernaut that it is today. And while everything seemed to be going great, there was one major problem. How could Justin Can and his team make any money from this? For several years, Justin TV had been running on a loss in order to put as many resources as possible into their growth, which meant, like most Silicon Valley startups...
Ué, ele não tinha a AdSense naquela época, né? Que, mano, 13 anos atrás muita coisa mudou, né? A gente não tem noção disso.
All their monetization relied on venture capitalists. But in the years following the 2008 crash, investors no longer regarded Justin TV's user base as sufficient for funding. Instead, investors were now looking for much more than a large user base. They needed to see that a company could function as a true, proper business. So Justin and his team would have to prove that Justin TV could become profitable, or they died trying. This situation caused immense dread for Justin and his co-founders. This had never been a problem before, and everything seemed to be going great, with the company raising over $7 million in investments before 2010. But now with their continued growth, their high running costs were now outpacing their income, putting the company into dire straits, and investors were ready to pull out. And so in response to this challenge, Justin and his team laid out a solid goal for the company. They would need to clear $1 million in revenue per month. This number would be enough to cover their costs and attract the eyes of investors. Justin was so desperate that he promised the company a holiday to Hawaii if they could achieve this goal. But this wasn't an easy goal. Almost no websites were creating $1 million in revenue per month. This was a staggering challenge. How could Justin and his team achieve this? Well, the fastest and easiest option were ads. And so Justin TV began to be spammed with ads, to the literal point that there were even adverts on their 404 page. However, at the time, this was the only way they could keep their investments. Without this, the company would be bankrupt. And unfortunately for Jason and his team, the problems wouldn't stop there. You see, while Justin TV's origins were creative and artistic, the business foundations were very weak, which would become very apparent in 2010. The main issue being international viewership. If the countries were outside of North America, Justin TV would lose money. It was clear that Justin TV didn't have a sustainable business model at all. The only solution they could come up with to this problem was to selectively block international viewers on a random basis. However, somehow this approach actually worked, cutting costs but still not harming international growth. And after a lean 6 months of cost cutting and penny pinching,
eu não entendi, eles cortaram outros países de conseguir acessar o site e eles conseguiram ganhar com o que com isso? Eu não entendi alguma coisa? 6 meses de cortes, de custo de redução, de custo? Mas esquisito isso, né? Porque eles estão limitando a quantidade de view, mas aí tem menos pessoas vendo. Não entendi. Propaganda localizada? Talvez é isso. Pega menos server, mas aí se pega menos pessoa. Não sei, talvez o custo de alguém acessar longe o site antigamente era maior. E, tipo, pra mim, hoje em dia, o custo de um cara te acessar da puta que eu pariu e do seu país não muda nada. É uma pessoa a mais te assistindo. Não eram relevantes pro ads. Faz sentido.
$1 million per month in revenue, doubling their revenue figures. They had done the impossible, and so Justin's promised holiday would happen soon after, and the celebrating seemed like it would never end. The Justin TV team would go out to Hawaii, partying endlessly every night. They had reached the golden point, getting drunk, enjoying themselves, making bank, revolutionizing the internet and making their mark on the world. Anything was possible. But while the team would endlessly party, big problems were bubbling under the surface. And little did the team know, the team would now be hit with an even bigger challenge.
O declínio.
You see, Justin TV had always had a tentative relationship with copyright laws, as at the time it was very hard to police the thousands of streams running on the platform. The company had reached a deal with Fox to implement a primitive form of content ID. However, this was still not enough for some companies, and after all the partying, Justin TV would be sued in 2011 by Zuffer, a promoter for American sports. They alleged that Justin TV had let its streamers broadcast pay-per-view UFC content on the site. However, it became clear that Zuffer was just trying to exploit Justin TV's unsteady business model. They knew the team were partying and had no experience in lawsuits. But when the case was brought to the court, it became clear how out of proportion the claims were, leading to the lawsuit being mostly dropped. Justin TV still had to settle for an undisclosed amount in regard to copyright infringements, but luckily for the team, they had escaped the bullet that almost killed YouTube. It seemed like all the problems had disappeared, and the company would keep on growing. Justin TV seemed to be unstoppable.
É incrível, né? Como copyright, mano, desde 13 anos atrás já era uma merda.
Becoming one of the biggest rivals to YouTube. The gaming section in particular had grown exponentially, far surpassing other categories on the website. And so in response to this, Justin TV would spawn a new subsidiary company, Twitch. In 2011, Twitch would be solely focused on esports and gaming channels. And as expected, the new website was a hit, reaching 3 million unique visitors a month, quickly eclipsing both Justin TV and its founders' expectations. Twitch had inadvertently become Justin's golden egg, but not just for Justin. Twitch was fulfilling the dreams of gaming enthusiasts around the world, with gamers around the world being able to make as much money from their passion as they wanted, with the only bar for entry seemingly being the creativity and personality of the streamers. These golden years catapulted Twitch forward, fully realizing realizing Justin's dream of a place for streamers and entertainers free to perfect their craft, unimpeded by corporate micromanagement and censorship. And this wasn't just Justin's dream, this was the internet's dream. And so a year later, Twitch had gone from 3 million monthly users to 20 million. Even this milestone was later surpassed, with the site growing to an absolutely crazy 55 million by 2014, making up 1.8% of internet traffic and surpassing Valve, Facebook, and even Amazon. Twitch's rise showed how much people valued creative freedom on the internet. However, this insane growth didn't come without its caveats. The Twitch team was still relatively small, and yet the site was becoming impossible to manage. It was clear they had to sell the company. They didn't have a business framework. Ever since Justin TV, the team was always poorly managed, but with all Twitch's growth, it became clear that Justin had completed the game. So the company was ready to be sold, and Google was the first suitors. They approached Twitch with an offer over the $1 billion mark. Justin and his team were over the moon. They'd achieved the Silicon Valley dream. They were the new YouTube, the new Facebook. They would be able to sit back and retire and live a life of luxury. However, just as their dreams were becoming true, Google had to back out at the last minute due to monopoly worries from the ownership of YouTube. Although Google had to back out at the last minute due to monopoly worries from the ownership of
YouTuber que Caramba, velho. Eu tava pensando isso agora, né? Tipo, mano, se o Google pegasse a Twitch, eu acho que teria sido melhor pra nós, streamers. Acho. O Google parece ser menos explorador do que a Amazon no geral. Mas... Aí eu até falo, nossa, será que... Eu achei que eles iam até falar que, tipo, o YouTube falou, não, 1 bilhão é muito, não vou querer não. Eu vou criar uma plataforma. Mas deu merda pelo jeito. Questões de monopólio. Okay.
YouTube. Although luckily for Justin and the team, Google wasn't the only one interested. Yahoo and Facebook were also making big offers, with one of the Twitch co-founders being personally called by Mark Zuckerberg, who offered $50 million in just investments, with both Facebook and Yahoo offering over $1 billion for Twitch. However, both of these offers were declined due to differences in visions on the future of the platform. Justin and his co-founders believed in Twitch. They believed in Twitch creating a new free internet, and so staying true to their ideals, they rejected offers from both of these companies because they believed that they would destroy the culture they had created. Yahoo, for example, had offered a sum hundreds of millions ahead of Amazon, but the deal fell through because they didn't see gaming as the primary market for Twitch.
What the fuck? Mano, Yahoo não é à toa que eles só se fodem, né, no mercado. Quem é dono da Yahoo, mano? Uns caras de 80 anos? A Yahoo, mano, só perdeu dinheiro nesses últimos anos, né? Só perdeu dinheiro. Eu tô doido. Yahoo não foi o... Yahoo... Valoi. Vamos ver isso aqui. Esse aqui eu não tô conseguindo chegar, tem um deck tracker aberto aqui, tá tampando minha visão. Como é que eu vejo Yahoo? Como é que eu vejo Price, se eu colocar? Ele não tem a finança dele? Yahoo Finanças, mercado de ações, cotação. Eu não tenho o próximo market value? Eles se venderam, velho? O que aconteceu? Não tá valendo mais nada, Yahoo? Yahoo teve a oportunidade de comprar a Google, não comprou. Yahoo só tomou decisão ruim, velho. Eu acho que Yahoo não tem mais a própria finança deles, velho. Não tô conseguindo encontrar. Como é que eu encontro isso? Stock Price. Aí. É isso? Como é que eu vejo o ano todo? Meu Deus, esse tamanho é confuso. Cadê o gráfico? Eu preciso de um gráfico. Charts. What the hell? What the hell? Expert Dynamic. Eu não sou esperto. Static Chart. Meu Deus, o bagulho é mó fudido. Período... Week? Ah, foda-se essa merda. Eu queria ver o ano. Mas enfim, Yahoo só cagando pau.
Despite the fact that they could have taken this money and lived a very, very lavish lifestyle for the rest of their lives. Instead, the founders' vision for the company was worth much more than that. And so in the end, it was surprisingly Amazon that agreed that they wouldn't change the general makeup of the site. Although if the Twitch team had known what Amazon would do to Twitch in the coming years, they might have also reconsidered this offer, but this will become much clearer later on. In the meantime, Amazon bought Twitch for $970 million in 2014. A small figure by no means, but still not really what was offered by other companies. But for the founders, this didn't matter. The true hidden reason for Twitch being sold was that the founders had gotten tired of running the company. They didn't care about setting up better systems of management. They had lost their passion. They were exhausted by their dreams becoming corporatized, because the founders only cared about freedom and creativity. They didn't care about the corporate management side of business. In fact, so much so that by the time the deal actually took place, Justin was nowhere to be seen. Instead, he was working on an art project for a music...
É isso que eu acabei de ver, né? É normal como isso acontece no nosso mundo, né? Parece que, tipo, é sempre isso, velho. Ou alguém tem uma ideia genial, ganha muita grana, e aí depois, tipo, não quer mais trabalhar nisso porque tem que lidar com porra de dinheiro, velho. Tem que lidar com muitas questões burocráticas e você cansa do projeto. Foi o que aconteceu com a Blizzard, mesma coisa. Blizzard, mano, se vendeu pra Activision no final das contas. E agora a Blizzard já não é mais Blizzard, né, velho? Se tornou outra coisa. Todo mundo que tava na Blizzard antes saiu. E aí se tornou uma super mega ação de dinheiro que é bizarra, né? É muito triste isso, né? É muito bizarro. Tem que administrar? Tem, mas ao mesmo tempo é triste que você tenha que administrar tanta coisa assim. É bizarro que você tem que lidar, tipo, com ações. Se preocupar com ações. Bizarro, é bizarro. Que você tem que, tipo... Na hora de você criar um jogo, você tem que consultar seus maiores sócios que compraram ações e explicar pra eles como o seu jogo vai lucrar pra eles. É muito triste, velho. Eu não ficaria feliz.
Festival, far away from the increasingly stressful world of business. It was clear that his heart lay in the creative grassroots side of the business. He just wanted to take his money, get out, and start a new life. And so the deal went forward, and Twitch, once an independent hub of creativity, was now just another Bezos puppet. After the acquisition, Justin left the company and began working on funding and running new startups ever since. And true to his creative side, he now runs a small YouTube channel in addition to his business work, with most of the Twitch founders going on to follow their creative passions. In fact, only one of the original Twitch founders, Emma Shear, still works at the company as the CEO. But despite his efforts to steer the company in the direction it once took, Twitch can't help but fall victim to the problems that come.
Olha a evolução dele, tá ligado? Ih, cara, apertei o botão errado, meu Deus! Olha a evolução dele, né? Tipo, continuou trabalhando lá. Ih, mano, agora. Pera, caguei tudo. Ai, meu Deus, eu apertei o botão errado. Calma, calma. Olha lá. Ele começou a trabalhar na Twitch na Amazon. Daí, pô, legal, mano. Tô aqui, mano. Você é um novo cofundador aqui. Vou explicar o bagulho. Aí passou uns anos já. Ele tá sorrindo aqui. Aí, mano, um lado já do sorriso já começa a cair assim. Já começa. Aí passa mais uns anos assim, velho. Olha a cara do cara, velho. Olha a cara do maluco, mano. Cabelo caindo, velho. Barba toda cagada, velho. Os olhos estão brilhando na maconha, parece aqui, velho. Fumou muito, velho. Só assim pra sobreviver, velho. A que preço, galera? A que preço?
Help but fall victim to the problems that come from big tech holding the reins. Because after the acquisition, Twitch's fate was sealed. From banning popular streamers by the truckload or mismanaging copyright and advertising on the platform, Twitch under Amazon has had its fair share of controversies. The first and most pressing of these issues was censorship. And now this really isn't a surprise considering all big tech companies eventually adopt a draconian censorship model. But Twitch's censorship is noticeably worse than any other big tech giant. And the problem lies with Twitch's moderation. You see, ever since the platform properly took off, there were always too many messages to keep track of, let alone moderate. But for advertisers, this wasn't good enough. They didn't want to advertise their content on, quote, controversial topics. So Amazon tussled with this issue for years after they acquired Twitch, trying and failing to suppress its culture of free expression. And this is why Twitch has become very infamous for banning streamers who displease the company policy, whilst also promoting popular streamers despite their flagrant abuses of the terms of service. This issue became particularly noticeable in December 2020, with the outright banning of words such as virgin, incel, and simp. But Twitch doesn't just ban simple words like this. Twitch has amended its misinformation standards and said that users who repeatedly disseminate misleading material will be banned. According to the New York Times, Twitch will now
Certa Twitch, foda-se, falei. Falei, foda-se. Foda-se. Pra que você quer permitir palavras que não servem nada pra, a não ser aloprar certos tipos de pessoas? Certíssimo. Falei, foda-se. Esse cara tá... É tipo o Monark, velho. Tirou minha liberdade de expressão, velho. Eu queria falar que nazista tem direito de ter um parlamento, velho. Tô aí, foda, certíssimo. Apoio. Apoio fácil, batata comunista, louco.
strict, quote, damaging disinformation super spreaders who regularly share misinformation on or off Twitch. With Twitch noting in a blog post that, quote, everyday people come together on...
Viu que um monte de gringo tá migrando pro YouTube? Vi. Mas não é por esses motivos não, tá? É porque o YouTube tá pagando eles. Tá migrando. Tá vendo minha aspa aqui? Tá vendo? Tá vendo minha aspa aqui? Tá migrando. Até o contrato deles acabar, eles votam.
On Twitch to establish communities that celebrate a range of hobbies, passions, and abilities. We're proud of Twitch's ability to bring people together, but we don't feel those who exploit internet platforms to propagate false, damaging information have a place in our community, in quotes. And this is why in very recent years, we're starting to see the mass banning of streamers, with even the major Twitch streamer Dr. Disrespect being permanently banned after just mentioning David Eichel in the stream. Yes, you can't even mention thought criminals on Twitch.
Quem é esse cara? Não é possível que ele foi banido porque ele mencionou um criminoso, velho. Não foi por causa disso. Duvido. Eu duvido. Esse caso desse banimento, ele nunca falou porque ele foi banido. Não sei se ele falou depois. Mas ele nunca tinha falado, por muito tempo ele não falou. Você migraria pro YouTube, Tesdey? Lógico que sim. Depende da grana, né? Mas se o YouTube chega pra mim e fala, ô Tesdey, vamos pagar 100 mil pra você vir pro YouTube. Fala, opa. Não sei, eu vou consultar ali com a minha comunidade, espera. Vai rolar. Eita porra, de novo apertei o botão errado, velho.
To suppress its culture of free expression. And this is why Twitch popular streamer in 2020 with the
Pera, onde tava? Caralho, não para de apertar o botão errado, desculpa.
And the major Twitch streamer Dr. Disrespect being permanently banned after just mentioning David Eichel in the stream. Yes, you can't even mention thought criminals on Twitch anymore, let alone any opinions that might go against Twitch's moderation team. But then who is in control of Twitch's moderation team? Who's setting these terms of service? Well, once you understand...
Isso é justo que ele tá falando. Pera, cadê a legenda? Que quem tá em controle da moderação, às vezes a moderação do Twitch caga no pau mesmo, né? Teve aquele rolê lá do... Uma pessoa falar... Dos... Daquele país lá que atacou a muralha da China, tá ligado? Aí o cara tomou ban, velho. Aí hoje em dia eu fico com medo de falar isso aí do nada, de repente, M-word, né? Aí tem uns bans que é muito nada a ver mesmo. MBL é de fuder, Tadeu. Aquilo era vídeos pra ver depois. E que tava escrito ali, o que é o MBL? Meteoro Brasil. Eu nunca vi. Eu acho que já vi aquele vídeo, na verdade, enfim.
Twitch's moderation team, everything else begins to click together, and it starts to make more sense why Twitch's censorship has quickly become so extreme, even beating YouTube in its draconian levels of censorship. For example, the people in charge of Twitch's censorship teams are people like Steph Lower, a prominent member of Twitch's Safety Advisory Council. Her position is very powerful. Steph has the power to control Twitch's terms of service and permanently ban users from the site. Now, who is Steph? Well, Steph is a person who believes they are a deer and perform rituals to be in tune with their, quote, deer spirit. And if that's...
Dislike, foda-se. Esse vídeo tá muito tendencioso já. Foda-se. Dislike, caguei. Ele tá ridicularizando a pessoa, velho. What the hell, foda-se que ele acha que é uma porra de um alce. Quero ver o que ele vai falar do que ela fez de errado. Aí tudo bem. Foda-se. NA legenda, desculpa, galera. Desculpa, pera. Traduzir automaticamente. Português. Bom.
Enough, hear me out here. They also try to achieve, quote, deergasms with their partner. This is who's in control of...
Ele tá falando disso nesse vídeo, velho. What the fuck?
Twitch's censorship team, and I'm sure she's the perfect person to impartially decide who can voice their opinions and which voices should be silenced. And Steph obviously knows how egregious this is, and openly brags about it, laughing about her power and control of Twitch, claiming, quote, some people should be afraid of me. But if you try to criticize Steph, the media immediately regards this as a hate and harassment campaign. And no, I really wish I was joking, and while Twitch's moderation team is a problem in its own right...
Então você tá com medo da pessoa que tem o viado gasme? What the fuck? Que bebezão o criador desse vídeo, velho.
This is also served to highlight another major issue that Twitch is now dealing with. But before we go into that, I want to talk to you.
Que bosta, essa parte já me bruxou muito esse vídeo, mas beleza, vou continuar assistindo. Tipo, o cara tem problemas com esse tipo de pessoas que têm ideias muito diferentes. Tudo bem se tem problema com esse tipo de coisa, mas isso não torna a pessoa incapaz de tomar boas decisões, não necessariamente. Tipo, o cara, o homem lá de terno, bonito, CEO, não sei o que lá, mano. Você não sabe, mano, mas a mulher dele normalmente dá uma lambida no cu dele todo dia, velho, e ele ama. Só que você não sabe disso, velho. E quando ele tá lá, ele chama isso de cu gásmico. Beleza? E aí você vai falar, oh, nossa, o cara é meu cu lá, não sei o que lá. Meu filho, todo mundo faz coisa estranha. Só que você não sabe. Aí o cara faz coisa, a mina faz coisa estranha na live, e aí tipo, oh meu Deus, olha quem vai cuidar da stream. Oh, a pessoa com certeza tem problemas mentais. What the fuck, irmão? Você que tem problema mental, velho. Você é CEO de algo? É meu sonho. Um dia eu chego lá. Proibido com gás.
About today's sponsor, Fabulous, the #1 self-care app to help you build better habits and achieve your goals. With all these social media
Okay.
Okay, so we've established that since Amazon's takeover, Twitch has become a very different place. But the censorship didn't just stop at banning words. The model of power mod censorship was then trickling down into Twitch's streams themselves, developing this ridiculous power imbalance between moderators and people in the chat. A streamer's mods have the power to ban, unban, and censor opinions they don't like, which leads to echo chambers of the highest orders. All while Twitch's stream culture promotes narcissism-prone young influencers to gain instant notoriety by generating enough controversy, and then to censor any of the backlash that comes with this through moderators' censorship. And this is especially true for girl streamers whose chats are full of neckbeards and simps. Of course, these specific chats require high amounts of moderation to filter out harassing comments and the like, but the mods of these channels often see themselves as the protector of the stream. These Twitch power mods are chosen for their devotion to being a white knight and their dedication to wasting their lives removing thirsty comments, which is why it's really no wonder that Twitch mods often end up being power abusing creeps in their own right. In fact, I even made a whole video dedicated to discussing the sorts of people who become moderators in the first place. In the video I boiled down, the moderators tend to be atomized, repressed, lonely losers who have no meaning, purpose, or connection in their lives, taking out their oppression by censoring information they don't like, and drooling on the e-feeds of bimbo Twitch streamers, milking Twitch's simpy cash cow. And I haven't even mentioned Twitch's admins themselves, who rule the site with an iron fist. The admins at Twitch are quick to ban any small channel that strays even an inch.
Ele tem um pouco de razão nisso, normalmente é meio que isso mesmo. E hoje eu fui moderador, então eu falo disso de boca cheia.
From the terms of service, although they don't even bother to adhere to their own rules. They just make it up as it goes along. All the while they protect the most popular streamers who have free reign to do as they please, so long as Twitch can still take their giant cut. I mean, Twitch is absolutely shameless with their committal to these double standards, which ties directly into their recent move towards so-called hot tub streams. Now, as I mentioned before, Twitch has always struggled to generate revenue, but under the control of Amazon, Twitch resorted to desperate measures, with Amazon deciding that the best way for Twitch to make money was not just to allow, but to actively promote softcore porn on their platform. Despite Twitch's terms of service prohibiting adult content, the site became proliferated with so-called hot tub streams, to such a degree that Twitch later added a separate
Veio cara perguntar hoje na live sobre isso aí pra mim, né?
category just for this topic. And while this obviously wasn't in keeping with the company's founding principles, it didn't stop Amazon from embracing the trend, milking as much cash as they possibly could from simps and neckbeards, with Amazon profiting from the growing class of desperate lonely losers, whose only way of addressing their pain of isolation is to spunk their grubby cash onto a virtual ego. And while these streams were hugely popular and led to lots of donations and revenue for the platform, it also angered the normal people on Twitch, and it became
as pessoas normais da Twitch. Aí mostra esse corno aqui. Tomar no cu. Esse cara, tipo, esse cara mostra exatamente o problema dessas questões. É tipo, o cara se acha um normalzão. Aí, tipo, pessoas normais pra ele é esse mongoloide aqui. Esse mongoloide é um dos maiores streamers da Twitch que ganha milhões de dólares com a... como é que fala? Eu sei, meu amigo. Fudei. Como é que é o nome? Gacha. Qual é o nome do bagulho do gacha em português? A máquina que você faz pululô. Ele ganha com dinheiro, com cassino. Ele fica fazendo propaganda de cassino. É esse cara, né? Não tô doido, né? Se eu não me engano. um caça-níquel que tá explodindo agora na Twitch. Ele ganha milhões e milhões de dólares todo mês e tá cagando. Então, tipo, esse cara tá falando, oh, nossa senhora, Twitch é opressor e quer ganhar dinheiro fazendo propaganda política do que eu não gosto. E aí ele vai lá e fala desse cara que tá ganhando milhões de dinheiro, fazendo coisas também ilegais e foda-se. E foda-se. What the hell? Então, tipo, esse cara só tá se choramingando esse vídeo todo, velho. Se eu não me engano, porque ele... Ué, qual é o problema de ter o soft porn lá se as pessoas gostam de ver isso aí, velho? Qual é o problema, mano? Foda-se. Foda-se. Ele tá bravinho. Ele fala que pessoas normais. As pessoas normais são os incelzão nerdola, tá ligado? Que é tipo... minha plataforma de jogo. Tem mina gostosa na minha plataforma de jogo. Elas ganham dinheiro. What the hell? Isso não pode. Minha plataforma... Foda-se, mano. Deixa elas ganhar lá, mano. Faz o seu jogo, mano. Você tem que pensar, velho, por que a sua stream é menos interessante que a mina gostosa lá, que só mostra os peitos e foda-se. What the hell, velho? Uma coisa não impede a outra, velho. Deixa lá, velho. Tipo, desde que não seja pornô, tudo bem. Eu acho que é totalmente legal, foda-se.
Source of mockery, leading at the time to the relatively obscure word simping.
Tem que ter um padrão dos bans. Tem, mas não é tão simples assim avaliar padrão de ban. Tipo, não é tão... É simples, mas não é. Porque, tipo, você tem que avaliar contexto no final das contas ainda, de certa maneira. Tipo, se você... Ainda mais quando a moderação é automatizada. Então, tipo, você pode tentar banir algumas palavras, por exemplo, racistas. Mas aí o cara fala essas palavras racistas falando... é estúpido quem fala esse tipo de coisa. Daí dá um exemplo... E aí a pessoa é banida, sabe? Então, pra moderação moderizada... Aí, tipo, ele provavelmente vai falar do simp aqui agora, né? Isso aqui, mano, pra mim, tipo... Eu acho um pouco a mais o banimento disso. Mas não acho errado banir. E você banir isso e você chorar sobre simp... É um bebê chorão. Nerdola chorão. Clássico nerdola chorão. Que sim, pra quem não sabe, era tipo como muitos streamers estavam usando esse termo. Virou um jargão. Que era tipo... macho que se ajoelha perante a mina. É isso, você vai lá fazer a coisa que a mina mandou porque você é um simp. É isso. Aí baniram esse termo, porque é um termo que teoricamente qualquer pessoa que era colocada como querer ajudar a mina ou elogiar uma mina, a pessoa falava, olá, seu simp. E isso aconteceu, inclusive, na comunidade de Hearthstone. O que mostra como, de fato, o termo denigre as mulheres de certa maneira. Porque... eu nem lembro como é que foi, mano. Foi um cara grande. Mas, tipo, alguém foi elogiar uma mina que mandou bem no campeonato. Aí um pro player chegou e falou, simp. Aí, tipo, tira o mérito do elogio da pessoa. Então é meio bosta. É tipo gado, isso. O gado, é isso.
Of public discourse. However, this ridicule was too much for Amazon to handle, leading to their insanely idiotic decision to ban the word entirely. But then again,
é meio
I guess it's not really a
isso.
surprise considering
se ele baniu por completo, eu acabei de ser banido.
People who control the flow of information in terms of service are busy having deargasms. And in fact, Twitch banning all words and criticism is a common occurrence. The ban hammer strikes often and with no regard for the terms of service or the livelihoods of the creators. And what's even worse is that whilst the small creators struggle to gain popularity and avoid...
Eu vou apagar o VOD, né? Tipo, eu espero que eles corrigiram esse tipo de coisa, velho. Eles não podem banir por essas coisas assim aleatórias, é muito errado. Talvez ele seja banido. E aí a gente se vê alguns dias, tudo bem. Só vou reclamar e é isso.
Being banned for the smallest of infractions, the largest streamers that bring in the most revenue for Twitch enjoy almost limitless protection. Because this is the real way that Twitch makes money. And this gets sinister not just for the fact that it erodes free speech on the internet, but also because of the way that Twitch is hiding sexual assault and harassment allegations against much of Twitch's biggest partners, all in the name of protecting profits. The worst offenders in these allegations...
Pera, como é que é, mano? XQC teve uma polêmica e estão defendendo ele? 2018, Overwatch Pro Players suspendeu por homophobic slur.
Marching Twitch's biggest partners, all in the name of protecting profits. The worst offenders in these allegations were given 3-day bans at most, and a tiny little slap on the wrist for such egregious allegations. Of course, all these problems wouldn't have happened in the first place if the site had stayed true to the founding principles that Justin had always championed. It was the greed of Amazon looking to make a quick buck of lonely, horny
Isso aqui parece muito, tipo, o que tá acontecendo na Twitter hoje em dia, velho. Que tem um monte de cara falando, nossa... O Elon Musk, é isso? Elon Musk, salve-nos da opressão do Twitter. Esse vídeo inteiro tá me passando essa vibe. É a mesma coisa.
Potato sexual.
Eita.
Teenagers that led Twitch down this dark path. But then this begs the more important question. Why are so many people throwing their cash on these parasocial relationships in the first place? How is Amazon able to make Twitch a multi-billion-dollar company just from people donating to these random streamers? And why are millions of young people wasting their lives watching people talk to a camera for several hours a day? Is it simply just horny teenagers, or is there something else to this? Well, it's no secret that our neoliberal dystopia indoctrinates young people to shun their own authenticity, community, and family for the replacement of virtual online relationships to provide them an empty sense of community. We live in a society that has normalized and accelerated the evisceration of the family unit. The building blocks of society are crumbling into dust. In the words of Theodore Dalrymple, the vacuity of modern life.
Ele tá indo muito longe, ele tá indo muito longe. Que? Não entendi nada. A vacuidade da moderno ocidente, transcendente, viver sem religião, sem... Tá crescendo, viver sem religião e sem créditos, sem acreditar em política. Que caralho ele tá falando, mano? O Brasil acho que nunca teve tão religioso ou tão cheio de política, velho. Que? Sem cultura criativa? Que?
Its lack of transcendence, lived as it is, increasingly without religious or political belief.
Nossa, não dá pra dar double dislike, velho.
Often without deep personal attachments and without even a struggle for survival. Taking us into a God-shaped hole, which is rushing the search for sensual pleasure, which, however, no more than distracts. And the sensual pleasure he talks about is now...
Tá, isso eu concordo. Eu discordo de tudo que ele escreveu, mas tá, a gente tá realmente vindo atrás de cada vez mais prazer, de certa maneira. Isso talvez é verdade. Isso talvez. Mas eu acho que desde a época da pedra todo mundo busca o prazer, velho.
Seen in the form of egos, fake parasocial relationships, and watching a drip of meaningless, unfulfilling content that leaves you open-mouthed, slouched on your bed, and tranquilized into a passive, obedient numbness.
Galera, vocês estão se tornando pouco a pouco... É que a tradução sai errada aqui, né? Mas vocês estão se tornando pessoas passivas e obedientes.
Guy Debord said, quote, "In societies where modern conditions of production prevail, all of life presents itself as an immense accumulation of spectacles. Everything that was directly lived has moved away into representation. And Twitch is at the forefront of the social phenomena, and it's become the lifeblood of Twitch's revenue model. The Amazon Twitch system works by trapping vulnerable people and providing a temporary solution to a permanent problem. If you can't get human contact from your real..."
Pessoas vulneráveis, velho. What the fuck, velho? Tipo... o que esse cara tá falando, mano? Tipo, com certeza tem pessoas vulneráveis na Twitch. Tá, assim como tem pessoas vulneráveis que assistem TV, mano. A Twitch é uma TV que você se comunica, velho. What the fuck? Mano, esse cara parece que quando surgiu a TV, ele fala, não, a TV tá lá para fazer o governo dominar suas cabeças e não sei o que, blá blá blá. Mano, esse cara tá indo muito longe, velho. Red pill demais, velho.
Life. Twitch gives you this through a rough facsimile, and this alternative seems to fill a hole, making it very...
Por que quando fala de... Eu não tô entendendo, porque, tipo, quem vê isso aqui
Twitch gives you...
tá tampando buraco na sua vida, mas quem vê o Batata Tadeu não tá tampando. Mano, é muito...
This through a rough facsimile, and this alternative seems to fill a hole, making it very hard for the victims of our loneliness epidemic to quit. And the really sad fact is that for these sad individuals to interact with their favorite popular streamers is through their wallets, competing with their fellow loners for attention. I mean, it's not like most streamers actually care about their fans in any meaningful way either, which is why during the peak of our loneliness in 2020, 2020, Twitch's viewership was up 67% and has now generated 140 million active monthly users. And the sad fact is there's no incentive for these people to break the loop, and it's likely that many won't, ever. They'll never want to give up their parasocial relationships, always stuck in this fake self-gratification world. And Twitch doesn't want them to break this loop. Twitch doesn't want you to be connected with your family and neighbors. It doesn't want you to have loving relationships, because they profit when you're
Eles não querem que você tenha relacionamento amoroso, tá?
lonely and miserable. This is their
What the fuck, mano? Que red pilado do caralho, velho. Isso tudo que ele tá falando pode ser dito da mesma coisa da TV, velho. De qualquer coisa que distrai você, que existiu na vida, velho. Tipo, jogo de cartas 500 anos atrás, o cara que jogava jogo de cartas, mas não. O jogo de cartas foi construído para que você se torne uma ferramenta do rei, para você fique à mercê e calmo, e você não se case e fique sozinho e busque companhias sociais para jogar jogo de cartas, velho. What the fuck?
business model after all, with Twitch taking cut of every desperate subscription or simpy donation. And this situation
Toda vez que ele fala de doação, dinheiro, subscribe, ele mostra o caso das mulheres gostosas, como não tivesse centenas, milhares de homens que recebem doações extremamente altas também, velho. Vai ver quanto o XQC já ganhou de doação, porra. Tomar no cu.
isn't healthy for the streamers either. Although ostensibly they're benefiting from these parasocial relationships, the unhealthy dynamic this creates makes these popular streamers live in this sort of weird trim and show lifestyle. The whole world knowing one's innermost life with no reciprocity. Sort of weird trim and show lifestyle.
Show de Truman era exatamente o começo que você tava elogiando lá, quando o japonês tomava conta de tudo. Era exatamente igual, era até pior no caso.
The whole world knowing one's innermost life with no reciprocity whatsoever can
Porque
wreak
agora
havoc on
isso-
the mental health of streamers, either turning them into egotistical narcissistic maniacs or depressed, anxious, emotional crybabies, which is why so many popular streamers seem to fall from grace in such a catastrophic fashion. And this might be one of the worst things about Twitch, directly profiting and contributing to the loneliness of an entire generation, just adding more and more billions to Bezos' empire. And the thing is, this is leading to even worse consequences, because when people get so attached to these parasocial relationships, this does foster a lot of emotions, and so
Tem muita tendência nesse vídeo bizarro. E tipo, uma delas que eu gostaria que houvesse uma pesquisa pra comprovar de fato isso, em vez de ser esse monte de tagarela do que eu acho isso e eu acho isso e a Twitch vai fazer isso e não sei o que lá. E esse ponto que ele aponta agora de tipo, a Twitch cria narcisistas, pessoas depressivas e não sei o que, blá blá blá. Não, olha, a Twitch mostra que essas pessoas existem, na minha opinião. Que, mano, há muito tempo existem pessoas depressivas e a gente tá numa sociedade que cada vez tem mais pessoas depressivas, pessoas bizarras, pessoas que fogem da tangente comum. E, mano, a Twitch mostra isso. Tipo, caralho, o streamer tá chorando na live. Olha lá como uma streamer acabou com a cabeça do streamer. Não, mano, tem milhões de pessoas que choram todos os dias num banheiro, tristes, porque depressão é um bagulho sério e real. Então, é muito bizarro. É muito bizarro esse vídeo. Como, tipo, tudo é culpa da Twitch. Não, a Twitch agora, as pessoas estão transformando, não sei o que lá, as pessoas estão virando monótonas, nossa, dopamina, não sei o que, blá blá blá.
sometimes there's rare breeds of Spurglords who begin to feel anger, annoyance, and despair at the fact that their relationships are just hollowed out digital distractions. And when they feel this pain, they want to get their vengeance. They want to attack the streamer that they feel is the cause of their problems, which is leading to one of the biggest problems on Twitch, swatting.
O maior problema da Twitch, swatting. Acá, o que acontece só nos Estados Unidos.
Swatting is when someone finds a streamer's address and fakes a police call,
Ou será que não é só um problema nos Estados Unidos? Talvez tenha nos outros países, eu não sei.
telling the police that this streamer is a serious danger, also that the police break into the streamer's house to arrest them. Probably the most famous example of this, however, is what happened to Ice Poseidon. the controversial streamer who seemed to be the swatting magnet. Now, he was already on Twitch's radar because of his unmoderated chats and the fact that his streams would often break Twitch's terms of service. But because of his popularity and the revenue and publicity he created for Twitch, this negative attention was often ignored. He was never banned, he was always just given a tiny little slap on the wrist. Although this all came to a head in 2017, when Ice was travelling to a convention by plane. He would broadcast all of the trip to the convention, as he did with most of his waking moments. However, Ice has always encouraged his viewers to swat him, and this time he wasn't doing this at his house. He was revealing the gate number as well as the airport he was flying from. This meant that viewers could easily know what plane he would be on, and so halfway through his flight, his plane was diverted and forced to land, because one of his viewers had called in a bomb threat, telling the police that Ice planned to hijack the plane. So he was quickly escorted off for questioning. But this was a crazy incident that hit the mainstream news and made Ice Poseidon infamous. Twitch had no choice but to ban him from the platform for his toxicity and constant swatting incidents. However, Twitch's giant incentive for streamers to create controversy at all costs, and the fact that most streamers won't ever face criticism due to their mods, makes this sort of thing a very common occurrence on Twitch. I mean, Ice Poseidon, for example, would always put swatters on a pedestal.
Esse vídeo fala como o tempo inteiro como tipo, a Twitch nunca baniu tipo, centenas, milhares de streamers que cagaram feio no pau. Tipo, é sempre não, normalmente a Twitch tá incentivando os streamers a fazerem merda. Tipo, tá nas regras da Twitch escrito lá. Você não pode receber incentivos para se danificar de alguma forma. Tipo, tá escrito exatamente isso. Tipo, essa regra desde que eu entrei, que foi 5 anos atrás. Então, tipo, se o cara tá fazendo esse tipo de coisa, ele vai ser banido, velho. E foi banido. What the hell?
Encouraging swatters for views, saying things like, quote, "What can you possibly do to create a challenge for these loser swatters?" He did this because these streams would go viral. Clips of his streams would gain hundreds of thousands of views.
Allowing Ice Poseidon nunca deu merda. Eu não sei se já deu merda. Eu não faço ideia. Eu sei que aqui não. Mas eu sei que daí uma época a Twitch chamou a atenção disso. E aí eu não vi muito mais drunk stream. Mas, bom, eu não fiz essa pesquisa, né? Eu teria que pesquisar pra saber de alguém que foi banido disso. Mas existe essa regra, teoricamente. Se você incentiva seu chat a pagar pra você se machucar de qualquer forma que seja, psicológica, física, bebendo, teoricamente isso é passivo de ban.
People swatting him, thus encouraging swatters all across the platform to commit these harmful crimes, sending a message for swatters across the platform.
Se esse vídeo falasse dessa regra, ele ia falar assim: a Twitch até censura o seu streamer de poder fazer o que deseja na sua própria plataforma, e não sei o que, e blá blá blá.
Platform to keep wasting police time and putting the lives of creators at risk. But swatters aren't the only ones playing with people's personal data, because Twitch is also a criminally unsecure platform. Twitch employees have always warned about the miserable security and the very big potential for Twitch to be breached. But of course, this advice always fell on deaf ears. Twitch management has always been horrific even since the Justin TV days. But of course, this would inevitably lead to what happened in October 2021, when a massive 125GB data breach revealed truckloads of information about Twitch's partners and even their payouts from the platform. And whilst this was horrific for Twitch users, and being a needed light on how weak Twitch's management and security is, this breach did also reveal some kind of fascinating insights. It showed that some of the highest paid Twitch streamers, people like Hassan Piker, a famous internet commie, gained almost $1.5 million from Twitch every year. And this is just from Twitch revenue alone. All for him promoting socialism and wanting to eat the rich. All while making millions from these people.
Caralho, quando eu achei que o vídeo não poderia ficar pior, ele até pegou um comunista pra falar mal, velho. Como o comunista ousa fazer parte do sistema? Maldito! Por que você não foi pra Cuba?
People who have no connection in their real world lives, but that's a topic for a different video. But what's more important was that this leak was done by one single hacker, a lone agent who managed to copy the entire website without raising any alarms, unveiling the very unsteady foundations the Twitch business model was built on. But even with this in mind, Twitch will still rise. In fact, Twitch is set to grow exponentially in the coming years, with the company projected to grow 25% every single year, because Twitch only grows when the population becomes more lonely and 9% every single year, because...
Casimiro ali! Não, pera, esse não é o Casimiro.
Twitch only grows when the population becomes more lonely and isolated, with shocking data revealing that about 40% of Generation Z suffers from loneliness, which coincidentally is the same demographic that uses Twitch the most. And when you stop to actually realize that the top streamers make almost all of their money from donations, you know, from people who are desperate for any sense of attention or connection, it's then not really that hard to understand how Twitch has made $2.3 billion just this year. And it also makes clear that the original creative, free and authentic version of Justin TV is dead. That's why the original creator Justin now lives a life hidden away from the hell of global big tech, hidden from Twitch's changing direction.
A criatividade e liberdade da Twitch morreu. O que? Essas pessoas estão na piscina ganhando dinheiro com isso? Oh, eu não gosto disso! Como você ousa deixar esse tipo de coisa acontecer na minha plataforma? O comunista ganhou dinheiro? Alguma coisa tá errado nessa Twitch.
A direction of maximizing its profits from simps and loneliness rather than creativity, community and ingenuity. So long as
a plataforma tá mais criativa do que nunca, velho. Antes era só sobre jogos, aí começou a ter um monte de coisa diferente. Just chatting, ou arte, música. Tem um monte de aba que incentiva a criatividade. Meu Deus, velho, é muito dor no cu esse vídeo, velho.
Generation Z lives their isolated, sedentary and self-destructive lives, increasingly devoid of age-old sources of happiness like community, religion, national identity and family, the more Twitch's toxicity will grow, resulting in Twitch going...
Mas a toxicidade vai crescer, daí ele mostra
and family, the more
a moderadora que se sente que é uma viada, velho, literal viada, tá? A toxicidade, essa é a plataforma que a Twitch vai se tornar, velho. O viado orgasme! Não! Você fez com minha criatividade!
Twitch's toxicity will grow, resulting in Twitch going from...
A pessoa tá sendo criativa na stream e o cara tá reclamando, velho.
A beacon of freedom and artistic passion to becoming a gigantic glossy monument to insipid vacuity.
Meu Deus. Esse é o pior vídeo que eu já vi na internet. É bizarro que talvez eu vivo numa bolha muito diferente, velho. A bolha americana é muito esquisita, dos Estados Unidos. É bizarro, velho. Meu Deus do céu, socorro. Meu Deus do céu. Esse vídeo lentamente vê uma paródia dele mesmo a cada minuto. Começando com grande fatos e razão para cair um monte de associações idiotas e acusações sem nenhuma nuance. Os cortes de branco e preto de uma pessoa obscura só dá o golpe final. Ai, meu Deus do céu, velho.